What's up, guys, and welcome to the Staying Driven podcast. I'm your host, Steph Roach, and this is a podcast with you in mind. Today, I sit down with Sean Conroy, and we talk about what it's like to go on so many wild adventures using a wheelchair. Sean has a sense of adventure that I am definitely envious of. He's going to Burning Man, and we talk. What's up, Sean? It's so good to have you on the podcast.
F.
Welcome.
Thanks.
I'm so used to seeing you at 6 a.m, so to see you at 5 p.m. my time, 8 p.m. your time it's a little different to see you in the daylight. Tell everybody where you're coming from.
I'm in Port St. Joe, Florida, in the Panhandle at my house on the beach.
Very cool. How long have you lived there?
Off and on a bunch of different times, but for probably like 12 years, probably off and on.
We've known each other now for almost a little over 2 years, I think.
Yeah.
And you joined Staying Driven, and I was so excited to see you. I saw you in one of our corporate memberships, and I was like, why is this kid not in our regular Staying Driven classes? And I'm so glad that I had you, kind of forced you to do it.
That's what you said. You're like, is there a reason why you're not in my other class every day?
Well, you've gotten so much stronger since then, so you're welcome. No, I'm just kidding. But over that time, we've gotten to become really good friends. You even came out to celebrate our wedding with us, which was so exciting.
Awesome.
I think the funniest thing is that we've never met from that. At that point, we had never met, and people thought we'd been friends for years. So that was pretty awesome. But one of the big reasons I wanted to have you on the podcast is because I think your story is pretty amazing. I think you have a very different perspective of what it's like to be a chair user, only because your journey started very young and then it kind of evolved when you got older. So I was wondering if you could share that story with some people and we can kind of go from there.
So I was born with a lipoma, like a tumor on my lower back of my spinal cord. So as soon as I came out, they like whisked me away and I did a bunch of surgeries. And then growing up, I did a bunch more surgeries and it affected my left leg and my ankle. So as I was getting older, I had to wear a AFO, like a ankle brace on my left ankle. And then I had a pretty good limp most of the time. And then when I was 20, I was done growing. So by that time, they wanted to release the tension on my spinal cord because there was like a lot of tension from the tumor. And then when they did that surgery, they hit a bunch of nerves. So I was in a wheelchair after that.
So did they try to get rid of the tumor and it didn't work, or was it just something that you knew that you had to live with, until you were 20 and they said, let's try to do something else?
Yeah, it was just putting more tension on my spinal cord. So it was affecting my legs more and more, and they were getting weaker. So then their plan was just to go in and take out more of the tumor and just release some of the tension. And then I woke up from that and it was kind of a shock that they cut a bunch of nerves and stuff. So yeah,
that obviously wasn't the game plan, I assume. That wasn't.
Not at all.
Yeah. So having to adapt to such a lifestyle, because like I said, I've known you for, better of 2 years, and you are one of the most active human beings I have ever met in my entire life. And I think that's why we get along so well, is because not only are you, a really good athlete and you love to work on yourself and your well-being and your fitness, but you also have this like sense of adventure. So what was it like kind of finding out you'd figured out this life from when you were born until you were 20? And I'm sure there were some challenges within, those growing pains, so to speak. But what happens when you're 20 years old and now you're adapting to a completely new lifestyle, having to rely on your wheelchair 100%?
I mean, it was a big shock, but I think my family, they didn't pay me at all, and it was just kind of a deal with it. Let's go, let's adapt, figure out other stuff we can do, keep doing. Because we grew up like real active family, going on trips and like being real active, and I think it just continued off after that. Like I got out of the hospital and I came home and like my dad had built this ramp that was just like way too steep. And
Not ADA compliant.
he's like, you'll get stronger. And I was like, and like all the doorways were cut out right at the wheels, at the
Oh
wheel
goodness.
side. Just like that. And it was just like, keep going, let's figure it out. I had like real good support from friends and family, and I kind of jumped right into being active. So that was like that was definitely good for my mental health and stuff like that.
Do you think that growing up that way and then also just kind of immersing yourself in, okay, like this is going to be different, but I still want to get shit done, right? Like I still want to go live my life and do my thing. Do you remember your life in your 20s when you were just kind of partying it up and having a good time with your friends? And did that ever really stop you, or did you ever think twice about, oh man, this is my life now?
It didn't occur to me too much. Like I didn't dwell on it too much for somehow. I guess I was just young and full speed ahead, and no one really treated me much different. Obviously, it affected like some decisions of like college and like a few things like that, but it definitely I definitely didn't have too much time to like feel sorry for myself or whatever.
Yeah, I love that about you too, is that you just like go, 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 right? And like I said, I think you're one of the most talented people I've ever met. And I think it's been really cool to kind of see the different layers of the onion that is Sean, because when we first met, you barely said like 5 words to me. And I was like, man, this dude is quiet. And I wasn't sure how to take you, but I love that over time you've been able to open up and you've been able to create some really cool friendships. Tell people what you do for a living, because I also think that that's pretty awesome.
So I design like metal fabrication stuff for at a metal shop, and I help run a metal shop. And so we I design lots of things for like fancy houses and gates and spiral staircases and sculptures. And I've had a few careers in the past, but this is the one I like. I get to be creative every day and like design some things and chop it all up and order all the material and send it out to the guys, and then like the next week it's all built. It's pretty cool. It's like a fun creative thing for me.
I never take for granted that my path in life has kind of changed, but I never take for granted the fact that like I was able to get an education. But I often laugh at the fact that like I did spend so much time invested in my higher education, and then I took a completely different path in life. I know
Yeah.
you and I have talked a little bit about that. What did you end up going to school for?
Um, well, first I went to school for music, and then I I dropped out of college like 4 times to have surgeries, and then I ended up going for digital media. So it was like web design, graphic design, video, 3D, stuff like that. And then
Very
I went to San Francisco and I worked for a few years at a startup building websites for like big brands and stuff. And then I got burnt out on the city.
do you ever still dabble in music?
Not lately, but I played in bands for like lots of years.
That's so cool. What was your instrument?
I played in high school and college. I played trumpet in like symphonies and stuff, and then I played keyboards in after college in like heavy, epic, like metal-y bands.
Angry bands? No way.
Angry bands. Some of
That's
them were angry.
That's one rule in staying driven. We all know that Coach Steph doesn't listen to angry music. That's not how I roll. Uh, I think it's pretty wonderful how you've kind of created this sense of adventure. We talked about that a little bit, but as you're starting to develop new skills and new passions, I know we've talked about one of your newest passions is going scuba diving. How did you get connected into that?
Well, I think most of my adventures kind of come from other it's well, I was living in Las Vegas and I was looking for something that for like other wheelchair people do because it seems like I kind of do that whenever I move to a place. I try and find out what activities there are. And so I was playing basketball for the Las Vegas Yuccas, and then they were like, you should come do hand cycles on Saturdays with the Project Hero, that like veterans and the first responder. And so I was doing hand cycles, and then they one guy was showing me pictures of a scuba trip, and I was like, how do I do that? And he's just like, just call this number and they'll sign you up. It was with it's called the Dive Pirates, and they trained me and bought all my gear, and then I got to go diving for a week in Key Largo.
That's so cool. I feel like our paths are somewhat similar in the sense that like we find a group of people and then all of a sudden it kind of snowballs. I remember when I became a hand cyclist, all I wanted to do was be laser focused on being like the strongest I could be. And then when I realized that like my normal daily routine in the gym was not working for me, I found CrossFit, right? And then CrossFit kind of turned into like this big snowball thing. So I find it interesting that like you start with one thing and then all of a sudden it kind of snowballs into other things, and I feel like we talk to each other and every couple of weeks you'll be like, yeah, I'm going on this adventure and I'm going to like Ecuador for like 3 weeks and just hanging out. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
Guatemala. And I'm like, oh my God, like, where are you going and what are you doing? But I always, I find that very admirable, I should say, because I don't know that I could just hop a plane and be like, yep, this is what I'm down for.
But I mean, I think that's like the what I love the most is just how how if you say yes, it and then it opens up opportunities, and then there's more and more and more. Like that's part of the reason when I first was in a wheelchair. I think that was part of the reason why it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where I didn't have time to like feel sorry for myself. I started playing tennis with these guys in town, and then I'm wheelchair tennis, and then I met this guy, Sam Dardick, who is like old generation wheelchair dude. That he was one of the main guys that started the ADA in like
Oh,
1990.
that's so cool.
So we were playing tennis, and then they had like disabled day at the fairgrounds, and so we were going to play like a exhibition basketball game against some able-bodied people or whatever, and we were horrible. But I was going by, and then there was a guy with a climbing wall, and he was in a wheelchair, and he was like, "Hey, come over here, climb this wall." I was like, "All right," and I was like a lot lighter back then, so I just like climbed the wall with just my arms and came back down. He's like, "We got to get you on a big wall," and then I started,
Rock climbing.
yeah, and then so I talked to him, and he's like this famous guy. He's Mark Wellman. He's like this famous guy that climbed El Capitan and Half Dome in a wheelchair, and he set it all up, and he's like the first guy to rock climb. And so he took me out on the wall with this other dude that had one leg, and he had like a pointy shoe. It was so we went up this uh straight up cliff. I was like 300 feet of just pull-ups, and
Oh, your biceps, man.
oh, it was brutal. And then it was just it 300 feet cliff is like in person, it's huge. And then he introduced me to these, like, he was friends with the snow skiing guys, so I got into snow skiing. And then those guys were also, they were like world champion snow skiers. And then
You just find these like random famous people.
dude, and then that they were like expert water ski guys. And like this guy named Matt Oberholtz, he did the first backflip on water ski. And then I went to a water ski clinic with them, and I met the guy that invented disabled water skiing, like that cage, that you sit,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
invented that. And then he's telling me about this lady in Florida that invented this ski for it. And so when I was going to college in Orlando, I started doing lessons with her
That's
all the time. So it just like kind of keeps building and building, and it
yeah.
was cool.
I always find it funny too. Like sometimes I don't realize who I'm talking to, right? So there will be times in my life where I have done some pretty amazing things and met some pretty famous people and had zero idea that they were famous. So this is one of the funniest.
Owen.
Well, Josh is a good friend of ours, but um I went surfing with Laird Hamilton and I had zero clue, and I'm sorry if you ever listen to this, Laird. I had zero clue who he was, and his friend, I forgot his last name, but his name was Richard, and they're super famous surfers. We went with Operation Surf to do like an adaptive surf program, and I'll never forget this. I got to surf with Kenny. They called him Skin Diesel, and they kept telling me I didn't need to use a life jacket. And this guy Richard, he was like, "Trust me, like I'm a pro. Like don't you don't need a life jacket." And I'm like, "Dude, you don't know me. Like I cannot swim in the ocean." Right? So I go on our first run, and we were there for like 6 days. And I go on our first run, and I'm like, "Oh my god, never again am I doing this without a life jacket," because I almost like didn't drown. And they like pick me up by my wetsuit, and I just see like Laird Hamilton just being like, "You okay, Steph? You're good." And yeah, but they were all super nice, but I had like zero clue who they were. But I think that is like a, I don't know, I think some people like that of just like going out, and everybody's a normal person, they still deserve.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not like dropping names. I just think it's cool that there's like people like, well, like yourself, that are like the OG like pioneers of the sport, and we have a smaller community, so it's like easier to
Yeah.
access them, I think. And it, like, I'm super grateful for all those people
I,
that get to learn from like that.
I just feel it's funny because like I guess maybe I'm just, I don't know, naive to certain things, and it's not to take anybody's accomplishments away, but like I wouldn't know any of those people that you talked about unless you introduced them and was like, "Hey, this is my buddy." And
Yeah,
he started telling me what he was doing. Like, I think
yeah.
it's super awesome.
You've been like water skiing and stuff, and people had to invent that like
Yeah.
30 years ago. People had to like come up with that idea and make, and there's all kind of people, well, like you, that were the first ones to do it, which we all should be like grateful for.
Oh, well, that's very nice of you. I don't know. I find like if you want something bad enough, you're gonna find a way to make it work, right? And I think that's the thing that draws the two of us together in our friendship is like if we want to go do something, we're gonna figure out how to get it done. I think one of the coolest things, like you were talking about the other, I think it was like a couple weeks ago, you were telling me about how you went to this beach and there was nobody really there, but they have these like buggies that you can rent.
Yeah,
And it's like accessible beach chairs that are like buggies or whatever. Like if people don't know about that, they need to know about it because
yeah,
you don't just have to sit in your house and do nothing all day.
yeah. Yeah, everyone should look it up. It's called Rish Park, and it's like a state park that's for disabled people. They got a pool, and they're opening cabins and stuff. It's like really right on the beach. It's beautiful.
That's awesome. Well, you have something else really cool coming up. I know that it's people have different opinions on it, and I definitely didn't know much about it either. But you are taking an adventure to Burning Man. and you're doing something pretty cool there. You want to tell people what you're doing?
Yeah, we have a camp there and we have a cart and I built this bus stop and then we have a cart and a trailer and we give rides to people that are like mobility challenged or whatever. It has a ramp on the back and just to help people get around easier out there. And we give art tours and just have people have more fun. It's
So,
pretty awesome.
for people that don't know what Burning Man is, can you explain it a little bit?
So it's like this city out in the desert that they build for the week, and like 70,000 people come out, and it's all the participants are the ones that create it. So they have like giant sculptures and domes and parties and DJs and like art, and every camp has their own like interactive event or something that they contribute to it. And then at the end, everyone burns it all down.
That's so interesting.
Like,
I find it funny because, like, well, it's not funny, but I find it interesting because, especially somebody that does use a wheelchair or somebody that does use accessibility devices, I wouldn't necessarily like music festival isn't necessarily the thing on the list where I'm like, that is 100% accessible, you know? So it's pretty cool to know that there are these places or these groups that kind of take people together to keep them safe and let them have a good time.
yeah, for
That's
sure. I mean, actually, I've been to a bunch of music festivals and they're surprisingly accessible. You get your own like platform in the middle of the crowd at most of them. So you're above everyone, like right in front of the stage. It's actually like I've been Bonnaroo and like a bunch of them like that.
you trying to get me to go to a music festival with you. I don't think that's gonna happen. I'm a little too claustrophobic for that.
Yeah.
Kind of want to go to the Dave concert in a couple weeks.
Oh yeah, that'll be fun.
I've seen Dave a couple times and it's pretty
You
awesome.
call you guys are on a first name basis?
I don't know what else do you call him? Dave Matthews Band? That's not his name. You know, when people say they're gonna go see Dave, who else are they gonna go see?
Yeah. All right.
I mean, if you go see, I don't know, Queen, you're gonna go see Queen. Nobody's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go see Dave, and you don't know who you're talking about.
All right.
I wish I was on a first name basis with Dave Matthews. He's, I don't know, is that his last name? Is that it? I'll have to look that up.
Yeah.
Is that actually his last name?
I don't know.
Oh, well, now you're gonna make me.
You're his fan.
We digress. We digress. So for somebody that's listening to this podcast and are looking for some sort of motivation, looking for some sort of adventure to do next, what do you tell the person that is looking to kind of get out of their comfort zone, get out of their house, and how to kind of tackle those resources?
I would say you have to have an attitude of like, let's try it. I could fail, but I need to try it. And it might not be the one for you, but you don't know if you don't try. And there's surprising amount of like small groups that are super into things like sailing and mountain biking and hand cycling and like, CrossFit, everything. They're out there. They're kind of hard to find, but they're out there for sure.
There's
And
also people that really want to find connection,
absolutely.
and just be part of something. So even if you're the first one to start something, you never know who's gonna follow you.
Yeah. And it's also cool to see people that are like experts at something and they're super passionate about it and you get to learn from them and enjoy their like enthusiasm and like see I mean stuff that you would never imagine. It's I never thought I'd be into CrossFit at all. I like clicked a button. I was like, yeah, fuck it. Click and look at us now.
Now you're stuck with me. If there's something on your bucket list that's still, something you want to check off, what is that?
It's probably got to be like, it's probably got to be skydiving. Something that scares me to death, but it means I should probably do it.
Man, you're better.
Paragliding, skydiving, paragliding, something like that.
You're better than me. Although I have wanted to do what's the one? Is it paragliding where you're like parachuting over the ocean?
Yeah.
No, that's parasailing, right?
Oh, where you're hooked to the boat still?
You're like, yeah, where you're like
Yeah,
holding on
that's
to
fun.
your life.
No, that's fun. That's cool.
When I was in New Zealand, if you ever get the chance to go to New Zealand, I was in New Zealand and I got to do the Taupo swing. And I had to climb, I think it was like 180 feet in the air. It was a lot of stairs. So somebody would either have to like backpack you or like I don't know, throw your chair up the stairs and you could like scoot your butt. But you get all the way up to the top, and because I legally wasn't allowed to bungee jump because they wouldn't push me, this swing, you like sat in this harness, and then when you were ready, they like unhooked you and you swung over the whole river. It was the coolest thing I've ever done in my entire life.
Sounds terrifying.
Yeah, and you should do it. It was a good time.
Right on.
All right, buddy. Well, I think people are going to be able to learn a lot from you. I think your story is incredible. I am so glad that you not only join Staying Driven every single day and I get to see your face every day, but that you joined me for this podcast and we talked a little bit about some fun things. And I think people are going to be able to take something good away from it. So
Cool.
I'm just so thankful that you joined me, and I'm sure we'll talk soon.
Yep. Awesome. I'll see you in the morning.